Welcome to Blue Blood TV, Season 6, Episode 12. This episode is going to be labeled The Blue Bloodbath. Carolina crushes Duke. Armando Bacot goes beast mode, and it wasn't your typical two-point nail-biter. Duke clashed with the Tar Heels and lost 93-84. Join Darryl, Will, and me as we dissect the game that stunned the Crazies. We will break down Armando's monstrous performance, 25 points, 10 rebounds, 5 assists, and analyze what went wrong for Duke and all the burning questions. Moving forward to this week, we're going to discuss the Tar Heels' loss to Clemson and Duke's demolition of Notre Dame. Guys, how are we feeling after this incredible week of ups and downs on the Duke Carolina roller coaster? Darryl, how are you feeling?
I think you could just tell by the look of my outfit how I'm feeling, Hassan.
You look fantastic.
Not a great day for me. Not a great day.
So those that don't follow our video podcast, Darryl is dressed in a Carolina sweat top. Will, how are you feeling after such a great win and then Tuesday night? How are you feeling?
And I feel great. Clemson's a good team, and anytime you go out and you can just put a hurting on Duke, it's a good time. It's a good time.
All right, well, guys, let's get into it. So, Will, Blue Blood Rivalry Bloodbath. And we're going to call it that because normally these games are 1, 2, 3 points. This was like a 9-point victory. Carolina cruised inside the Dean Dome. Will, did you expect a win of this magnitude?
I thought we could. I don't know if I expected us to be as dominant as we were. We didn't lead by fewer than 7 in the second half of that game. I mean, Darryl and I bet in last week's episode that I thought Carolina would cover the 4.5. So I knew it would be somewhere in that range, but I didn't think it would be as dominant of a performance as it was.
All right. Darryl, does this lackluster performance in the Blue Blood Rivalry Bloodbath dash Duke's ACC title hopes? I think I looked today. I think University of Virginia just moved up ahead of Duke. Thoughts, Darryl?
Absolutely, Hassan. I do believe that it kills the title hopes, ACC title hopes. Just being very honest, I believe that I do believe that it was an important game for the ACC title. Right now, Duke's really trying to figure it out. Luckily, following the Carolina game, played a very, very good game against Notre Dame, and I believe that they can build off of that momentum and continue to win games. But I do believe the Tar Heels may be at, I believe, 9-1 in the ACC at this point. Might just be a little too far ahead.
10-2 in the
10
conference.
10-2, yeah.
I'm sorry, 10-2, 10-2, 10-2 at this point. Could be a little too far ahead. I just don't imagine them losing much more because they are a very good team, and I think Duke is a very good team. But I don't know that Duke has or Carolina has the schedule moving forward that would result in enough losses for Duke to catch up.
Okay, Darryl, let me just give you like the standards. Carolina is number 1 at 10-2, but creeping up, University of Virginia is 9-3, but they have an 18-5 record overall. In addition to that, Carolina's record is 18-5, and then Duke sits at 17-5 and 8-3 in the conference. Will, what are your thoughts about what's going on? What did you expect this?
That's a tough one. I thought that we'd win the game by more than the 4.5, but I thought it would be because it would be close and then there would be fouls and free throws at the end. I didn't expect personally that dominant of a performance. I mean, we came out and we were ready to go, and Duke looked flat in the first half. And then anytime they tried to answer, we turned around and threw it right back in their face. It was fantastic to watch. The boys just put together a great performance, and arguably, I mean, he's on the list, the short list for player of the year, national player of the year. And RJ Davis kind of had an off night. It was a quiet, I think 17 or 18 points. But Ingram finally came out of Ingram stepped up, and then Armando as well. So it was good.
So let's talk about Armando. We've
That's
been
bad.
asking you, where has this guy been, Will? And you've been telling us Armando is good for this team because he attracts attention. Armando is good for this team because he's doing what we need in the offense. But it looked like the other night against Duke, there was an awakening. And Armando got 25 points, 10 rebounds. You said you predicted a double-double, but you predicted 11 points, 11 rebounds.
It was like 13
And,
and 10 or something like that.
and 5 assists. He had more assists than Elliot Cadeau, who had 7, 2 rebounds, and 4 assists. He had more assists than his point guards. Tell me about it. Was this part of the game plan, or has Armando been asleep for the whole season, except he woke up against Duke? Talk to me.
So I don't know if you heard Hubert come out prior to the game and just talk about a conversation that he had with Armando. I think Armando was kind of in his own head a little bit, just based off the narrative that the national and statewide sports reporters have put out on him, where he's having a down year. Is he too focused on NIL money and yada yada yada? And he something about taking a back seat, I think, and he was Hubert, sorry, was like, yeah, I haven't heard anything about you taking a back seat. If you're taking a back seat, we don't need you to step up. And he went out and, I mean, he had 25 and 10, and then the next game against Clemson, he had 23 and 14 or 23 and 13, I think. So
24 points, 13 rebounds, one
yep,
assist.
yep. So I mean, I think that if he can play at that level, Ingram does what Ingram does, and then our guards do what our guards have shown that they can do. I think we can play with anybody. I think the game plan for Duke was just that, I mean, yeah, Filipowski's good, but he's one big guy. If you throw Ingram can play bully ball, and Armando can bully some people as well. That worked.
All right. So let's go over to Darryl. Darryl, can the Devils salvage this season, or should we expect more losses in ACC play? Talk to us, Darryl.
Absolutely. I don't even know if I would say they would be salvaging the season. They lost to a very good Carolina team, number 3 team in the country. Probably not after this week with the Clemson loss, but still, exceptional team. And so I don't even know if it will be salvaging a season. Do I foresee any more losses in the ACC? Possibly, because this has been an inconsistent Duke team. But I do think it's still a good Duke team. I will, and this is you can say this is boiling hot. I will say that I am now off of the boat of Filipowski being the best player in the country. I can't watch a guy who's supposed to be the best man on the team, let alone the best man in the country, go up against a matchup in a big game, nationally televised in an epic rivalry, and to watch another man score 20 plus points, 10 plus boards, 5 plus assists, and not put up a fight. You know, he dropped 22, but he watched his team's hopes of winning that game drop down the toilet, and he could have put up 35. And I know that's
Are,
probably asking for a. Go ahead, Hassan.
are you sure that this Filipowski guy is not like an old school Tony European player like Tony Kukoc? I mean, he's offensively he's very good. Defensively, he's terrible. And his fight drive to play the game just seems lackluster. Is that fair?
I think that's very fair. I also believe that Duke's weaknesses showed in this game as well. I believe that we've been talking all year about their size, right? And we've been praising Carolina's size, and it was obvious in this matchup between Harrison Ingram and Armando Bacot that they just were bigger than Duke. Now, obviously, Ingram hit 5 threes, but it was clear that Duke doesn't really match up well. But I do believe in the next matchup that the guard play that was actually pretty exceptional considering the numbers, is going to be what carries Duke to a victory. It's not going to be Filipowski. It's got to be the guards.
Okay, so coming up on Duke's schedule, I'm just going to point out some notable games. February 17th, Florida State, big team. Does Duke win that game? And I believe the game is in Florida.
I do believe Duke wins that game on the strength of their guard play.
Okay. And March 2nd, as we're approaching the Blue Blood rivalry game, they play Virginia. Virginia has to go to Cameron. Does Duke win that game?
Virginia's been sneaky good, but I give Duke a win at home.
Okay. NC State, March 4th, right before the Carolina Duke game. It's at NC State. Does Duke win that game?
Well, that one I'm concerned about just because I think it may be a trap game leading up. I think the hype is going to build up even more than it did for the first game with Duke and UNC. So I think that could be a trap game. I'll give Duke the win, but it wouldn't shock me if they lost that game going into the Blue Blood rivalry.
Okay, March 9th, UNC Duke at Cameron. Who wins?
We stamp it right now. We're gonna smash them.
All right. All right, Will, you are back up. What do you think about Ingram's 21-point performance against Duke? I mean, you had Ingram and Armando leading this team. Your front line was banging the boards. What do you think about that?
Ingram's fantastic. I think he's been arguably our best, maybe most valuable player all season. The dude can do it however you need him to. He's big, but he went out and like Darryl said, he hit 5 threes. So he draws Duke's other big men out and then can get the ball down inside to Harrison Ingram or to Armando. And yeah, the guy's just fantastic. He gets it done any way we need him to get it done, night in and night out.
Okay, all right, all right, all right. Darryl, was Duke's game plan to slow down RJ? And in doing so, did they forget about Armando and Ingram because they were so focused on making sure that RJ did not get off? Thoughts?
No, I don't think the game plan was to focus on RJ. Obviously, you're putting him on you're gonna put him on your board. He's a player to focus on. Of course, he's been probably the best player in the ACC this season. And so I'm not taking anything away from that. I just believe that Carolina exploited Duke's lack of size. I think that going into it, Duke's guards have been really pretty good all season, and I think that the matchup in that aspect with R.J. Davis was going to be a wash. As you saw, Jeremy Roach played a great game. You had Jared McCain who played a really, really, really good game. Tyrese Proctor didn't show up, but I do believe that what you saw in Harrison Ingram and Armando Bacot's dominance was also Duke's biggest weaknesses, and that, like I said before, that's size. And so I think it was very difficult with between Filipowski, Ryan Young, and Mark Mitchell that they matched up with Carolina pretty poorly in that aspect. So I don't think it was them necessarily focusing on RJ and trying to stop RJ. Of course, that's what you want to do. You want to be able to contain the ACC Player of the Year. But I also believe you just saw that Duke wasn't big enough to handle what Carolina had going on inside.
Okay. Will, talk about Hubert paring the bench down to 8 players. And then coming off of that Duke win against Clemson, we're going to talk about Clemson later. He went back to his 10-man rotation. And finally, give me your thoughts on Seth Trimble. What does he add to this team? What makes him so valuable?
So I'll start with Hubert in the bench. I love Hubert's coaching job this season because what he's shown in his adjustment from game to game is that he's just doing what is called for each game. And a lot of coaches would just stick to a 7-man rotation and if they were getting pounded, they would just stick to that 7-man rotation and just let things unfold. And this guy has gone into every game. We've played as many as 10, 11 guys, and we've played as few as 7. So I liked it. I think it worked for the Duke game. And then it kind of leading into the Seth Trimble thing. Trimble was out against Clemson with whatever the heck an upper body injury is. Sounds like a hockey injury report. But I mean, you've got to that's how valuable Seth Trimble is defensively for us. And having Wojcik play double-digit minutes and then having these other guys come off the bench as well, that just goes to show you that Hubert is willing to adjust from game to game and change his kind of scheme based on the opponent rather than just dig into one system. And Seth Trimble I think he's our best defensive player that we have. He's a shutdown defensive player, and Joe Girard ate us up on Clemson in that game, and Seth Trimble would have been there to be able to lock him down. So yeah, I mean, you saw in that Clemson game how valuable Seth Trimble is.
All right, Darryl, what adjustments does Duke have to make to beat the Tar Heels on March 9th? Also, let's talk about Jared McCain. Is he the best player on this squad, Duke squad, outside of Filipowski, or do you have Jared McCain ranked higher than him? Talk to me, Darryl.
I'll start with the first question. I don't know, if you guys really paid attention against Notre Dame, but Shire actually played Sean Stewart a lot more than he has all year. And I think that Sean Stewart could help the Blue Devils in the matchup against Carolina. He's longer, he's more athletic, very different than what they've been playing a lot with the 6'5" or shorter guards that they've been putting three of them on the court at pretty much all times of the game, if not four. And so I think Sean Stewart actually provides a little more size and a lot more athleticism, which would help the Duke Blue Devils against the Tar Heels. On to Jared McCain. Is he the best player on this team? He's looked like it, or excuse me, second to Filipowski. He's looked like it, but he's also been inconsistent. But I will give him all the credit in the world. He paints his fingernails. He does TikTok dances. On that court, man, he is a dog. Just the fact that he had, I believe, 11 rebounds in the game against a team that's as big as Carolina is says a lot about his heart, his drive, his will to try to win the game. And I think John Shire mentioned it himself when he talked about Duke post game after Carolina that they weren't diving for enough loose balls. They weren't fighting hard enough. And so, Jared McCain is that dog, and I believe he's going to have to be the heart and soul of the team. But I also believe that it all starts with Jeremy Roach, and we talked about this senior leadership, and they're going to need that moving forward because it's a very young team, and I think that if Jeremy Roach can continue to kind of fuel Jared McCain and encourage Jared McCain, it will pay dividends for Duke in the long run moving into March.
So who leads this team? Is it McCain? Is it Filipowski? Is it Roach? Tell me who's the leader of this team, Darryl.
The leader of this team is Jeremy Roach. The best player on this team, in my opinion, might be Jared McCain. I don't think it's Filipowski.
Is Jared McCain a one and done, or is he coming back next year? What are your thoughts?
If he plays the way that he did against Carolina the rest of the year, if Duke makes a tournament run and he does similar fashion, I believe that he may leave. You're in the age of the transfer portal. You're in the age of NIL. But it's not every day that you can go into the NBA draft and be a lottery pick. And I think if he continues to play it the way he did in the Dean Dome, I think his name could start moving up the draft board.
All right. So, guys, let's talk about the upcoming Duke Carolina game. If UNC sweeps the Blue Blood Rivalry Series, should we rename this battle the Blue Blood Rivalry Bloodbath?
No.
Further.
Yeah.
No.
Should Coach K rethink John Shire as a coach, or should Duke rethink its recruiting strategy, get more into the portal, get some older players, and combine their class with some older players and 5 stars? I'm going to go to Will. You're up on this one.
Absolutely. Rename the rivalry the Hubert Davis. Rename it the Hubert Davis Invitational. I don't care. Name it something.
He got swept last year.
It doesn't matter. People have short memories, man.
Recency bias. He got swept last year. There's no way you guys can sit here and tell me this should be the bloodbath because he redeemed himself.
If you look at it, these games are always close, obviously, but
it wasn't close though. That game was not close.
That was where I was going with that. It's the most recent one. it's recency bias, obviously, but we beat the brakes off of you guys. You guys, honestly,
Congratulations.
there was no fight at all in that Duke team. I was embarrassed for you guys. Like they just looked like they didn't want to be there. If you're Shire, go out and pick up a technical. Try to fire your boys up at some point in time. Like do something. Do anything. Do anything.
So they should get like Chris Collins back on the bench so that
just go bananas for sure. Do something. Those guys look like they didn't want to be there.
Darryl, come on, talk, Darryl. Talk, Darryl.
I'm not going to dispute that was an embarrassing performance. That was not one of your typical Duke Carolina games. I will give you that 110%. But John Shire, in his first year at Duke, swept Hubert Davis. So Hubert's not doing anything but catching up because right now he's down 2-1. If I recall correctly, is that right, Hassan? When it comes to Hubert against John Shire, excuse me.
Oh, I mean Hubert against Duke is 3-2.
3-2.
Hubert against John Shire is.
It depends on where you go back. If you go back to John Shire, it's 2-1. If you go back to Coach K, and you go to the Coach K funeral game, you go to the Final Four. I mean, it's 2-1. So it just depends on when you go back.
Yeah. So if you have to depend on when you go back, or you have to debate about what year we're talking about, clearly it's not a bloodbath.
That game was a bloodbath.
Absolutely,
that's not typical of that specific game. That game has historically been a 1 or 2 point game.
Oh, absolutely.
That's been a nail biter because the defense in that game is the best part of that game because nobody's taking players off. Everybody's playing every touch of the ball from start to finish like it's the NBA fourth quarter finals with 3 minutes left to go and the game is tied, right? That's what makes that game the most watched game in the country because you rarely see an NBA game. You rarely see a college basketball game where the kids are locked in on every touch of the ball. And my problem with that game was John Shire did not have his kids locked in on the defensive side of the ball like teams of the past have been locked in. Will, any thoughts on that?
So I agree with you on the defense thing, but I think it goes to the second point of that question is about the recruiting strategy. Since 2015, I just saw a statistic. Since 2015, Duke has 35 five-star recruits. Kentucky's got 34. Carolina has 17. They're in third place. So they're twice as many as Carolina. And you guys have won what? We won back in 2015, and that's it, right? So in the same time, we've made it to Final Fours. We've won a national championship. We've done – I truly think that watching that game, it was frustrating because, I mean, we all grew up watching this rivalry, right? And if you watch the rivalry when we were kids, and even 5-6 years ago, guys got up for it. There was just a level of energy that was brought, like you said, it was like an NBA Finals type game. And with these 5-star recruits, these guys don't. It almost looks like they just don't give a shit about the game.
The only thing comparable in basketball is Game 7 of the NBA Finals, win or go home. That's what this game is, right? It's all or nothing. And my problem with the game was I didn't feel like Duke competed like they should have. And defense is something that you can control, right? You can't.
Prepare for Duke and North Carolina to face off like never before. Blue Blood Rivalry 5K! 5K! Sign up one, sign up all. Students, families, alumni, locals, non-locals, everyone! And you don't even need to be from UNC or Duke, because we have a Party Crasher division. Party Crasher! Come State, Wake, UVA, anyone, and join the fun. Crash their party! But the real battle is between the Blue Devils and the Tar Heels. Before it's settled on the court, it'll be settled on the race course. But there's more! There will be a special basketball dribble division where each participant will travel the race course dribbling a basketball! Dribbling a basketball? Hell yeah! That's cool! So sign up now! Attention all racers, prepare for the event of a lifetime. The race course will most certainly decide a champion school.
Carolina fans, download Duke Carolina, the Blue Blood Rivalry film on iTunes or Apple TV or wherever you get your VOD downloads.
Hey Queen, Queen, you know you my guy, right? I'm always putting for you. Tonight, when you step on the court, I step on the court too. And we in it.
So 2 games that night. It's the North Carolina game at Duke and the Duke game that's at North Carolina.
When we wake up on game day, there's a knot in my stomach. We've been up since 6 a.m. this morning watching recorded Duke Carolina games.
I watched the Rivers shot
about 15 times.
Yeah. Rivers on his own. Yes, at the buzzer.
We're here for the Duke game.
And it is 10 hours and 9 minutes until game time.
The Blue Devils win 85-84.
Nothing better than North Carolina and Duke. It is the best rivalry in all of college basketball. Hall of Fame coaches, great players, and usually so much at stake.
And that's it. Carolina's won it.
The fans have as much to do with the rivalry being great as the players and the coaches.
It's 5 hours before game time.
Well, there's no question that the rivalry is there every day in our community.
Can you imagine what it would be like around here if people didn't have it? It would be terrifying.
We are 30 minutes away from tip-off.
It's one of the most exciting events you can be a part of, and I still say it's not the biggest rivalry in college basketball. It's the biggest rivalry in all of sport, bar none.
It's game time!
My next question is, because of that, should Coach K rethink Shire as the coach? That's for you, Darryl.
No. Coach K needs to enjoy his retirement. That's what he needs to do. Let John Shire coach. The guy just won 2 games against Carolina last year. We can't. Okay,
then what about his recruiting strategy? The one and done 5 stars is over because now you can look out on the landscape of college basketball, look at a guy like Ingram who's sitting over at Stanford. You know he's going to give you 12 to 25 points a game. You know what you're going to get, and you put some older players in combination with your younger stars. That's the formula that Carolina's using to win. Do you think they need to rethink how they're recruiting? That's the question.
I think that Duke has, first of all, I think that it requires a balance, right? I don't think one and done has ever really worked. There's only a couple of teams that I could think that were real one and done squads that actually won national championships. One of them being, in a way, the 2015 Duke team, where you have Jahlil Okafor, you had Tyus Jones, you had Grayson Allen.
I wouldn't
those
even
guys,
call that team
Justice
a
Winslow.
one and done team, though.
You said what now?
I wouldn't even call that team. I mean, you guys had Grayson Allen was what, a senior, junior?
It was his freshman year. First year,
was?
he barely played. He didn't show up until the Wisconsin game, and then you had Quinn Cook was your senior. But your core was Tyus Jones. You had Jahlil Okafor. You had Justice Winslow, who all, if I'm not mistaken, left that year and went to the draft. And then on top of that, I believe it requires a balance. You had a Kentucky team as well, I believe, with Anthony Davis that won the national championship. But you have to have a balance. And some years you're going to hit on these transfers, and some years you're not. They had Ryan Young who came in. They expected him to be a big piece of their team, and he's had some good games, some decent games, but he hasn't played like Harrison Ingram. Absolutely not. And I think that I believe that it just requires a balance. I think you have to have your tenured players like an Armando Bacot, right? You have to have your freshmen who stand out like a Elliot Cadeau. Who can play and help you out when you need it, but you also have those seniors who can pick him up when he's down, because your freshmen are going to be inconsistent 9 times out of 10. And then you got to have your middle guys. You do have to have those transfers. You have to have those guys who do have experience and haven't really been with the team, like a tenured Armando Bacot, but they also have experience at another university and in other college basketball games where they were the man. which is the case for a lot of these transfers. I just think this year, in this game especially, that Duke came out with a lackluster performance and they fell on their face. But it doesn't mean we need to reconsider everything every game. We got to cut it with
Darryl, I don't
recency
think that's
bias.
what we said. I think we said a combination of 5 stars, right? You pick your top 3 guys, and then you go into the portal for some older guys that are going to be really consistent, right? Because you don't know what you're getting from your Duke players. Like we've talked about Blakes, we talked about TJ Power. There was a time where you were like, okay, TJ Power just had a great game. He's going to shoot to the top of the list. You talked about Jalen Blakes. He had a great game. He's shooting to, you know how many minutes he got the other night? 0. You know how many minutes TJ Power got? 0. The problem is that they're young, and that they need time to develop, right? And then at the beginning of the season, you were not talking about Jared McCain, but we're talking about him now, right? So what I'm saying is these 5-star guys are all good, but you don't know what you're going to get from them in big minutes, right? And if you brought in some more senior guys, some bigger guys, just to role play on these teams, it would add value to a Jared McCain, a Tyrese Proctor, a Caleb Foster, a Kyle Filipowski.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you, Hassan. I think that my issue is that I don't disagree with you actually. Let's get back to Jon Scheyer because I don't think that what I don't think is that Duke is. I don't think that he's maximizing what they have, right? And I think that it kind of goes back to our conversations throughout the year about who he's playing, how his rotations look, and I've been talking about Duke's solid 6 for a while now because they've been playing, a solid 6-man, maybe 7-man rotation most games. But if you look, and yes, it was a pretty handily win here against Notre Dame, but they played 10 players in that game. Caleb Foster got 25 minutes. Ryan Young
if you're
got
up
16
25
minutes.
early, you
Sean
can
Stewart
afford to
got
play
11
10
minutes.
players,
When you watch I think when you watch a Carolina team go out there and you're on the court with them and they're rotating guys in and out, I think Jon Scheyer might have opened his eyes a little bit to say, okay, I got to give these guys a chance because solid 6 isn't gonna work. I need some depth. I have the depth on the bench, but I got to let the guys play. And like I said, he had 8 guys play 11 plus minutes. And so I think that I think hopefully moving forward, they're going to start utilizing some of that talent they have on the bench.
Or Jon Scheyer is searching for answers. I saw his. Go ahead, Will. Do you agree? Searching for answers?
I agree with you completely, and you took the words right out of my mouth. I think it's easier to run a 10-man rotation when you get up 25 early, right? Like you can do whatever the hell you want to at that point. You've got the wiggle room. Notre Dame's a terrible basketball team this year. They're dead last in the ACC.
We need those Charleston Southerns, don't we, Will?
I'm saying, yeah, it gives you time to figure out your rotation. But what I'm saying is I think Duke's problem is that they just don't have enough. Sometimes these 5-stars were mislabeled when they were recruits, right? Like you don't hit on every 5-star that you've got, right? I mean, every team has missed on 5-stars. So it's just I just don't think Duke has enough this year.
All right, so Darryl, let's talk about Notre Dame. Let's talk about last night. Is that something that we should talk about? Duke beat Notre Dame, or was that something that we should have just assumed was supposed to happen?
Listen, the line was 17.5 going into the game. I mean, it wasn't like anybody expected Notre Dame to really compete, right? But as a Duke, say Duke fans, right? It had to be pleasant to see following the Carolina loss that they were able to dominate Notre Dame the way that they were because they could have come in and been flat once again, right? So hopefully you're hoping that this lackluster performance that you saw against Carolina actually provides a spark for the rest of the season. It's not something worth talking about that they beat Notre Dame, but it is something worth talking about that they followed that loss with a big win. And it doesn't matter what the competition is, it's the ACC. And on any given night, especially in Cameron Indoor, teams are going to come out and they're going to give you the best shot. And so to see Duke, up 8 at the half and winning by 18 eventually, come out and actually give a pretty solid performance was promising. But I will say that it also is, for me, it is a bit of a concern that Duke shot 22% from 3. And I say that because they do lack size. And we've talked about this all years. Live by the 3, die by the 3. And if they shoot 22% against Carolina, against Clemson, hell, even against NC State. I don't know that they're going to win those games. They can beat a 7-16 Notre Dame team like that, but they can't do that moving forward. So I saw some bright light, but I also saw some things that need to be improved.
Okay, Will, UNC's loss to Clemson 2 nights ago. Was that a result of a Duke Carolina hangover, or was Clemson a team, that's not really doing well in the conference, good enough to beat both Duke and Carolina? And if you listen to our last podcast, I said Clemson lost that game. Duke did not win that game, and Clemson could be on a 2-0 win against both Carolina and Duke in the last week of ACC play. Talk to me, Will.
Yeah, I think it's a little combination of both there. We came out flat, and I think that the big games are tricky like that. It's always kind of a trap game afterwards, especially against a Clemson team that's finally getting healthy. That Shefflin kid, and then Joe Girard, and then PJ Hall. PJ Hall's a really good big man who can hit threes, who can stretch the floor. And yeah, Clemson's kind of underperformed this year as far as their ranking goes, but if you look at their non-conference schedule, it's really, really tough. And there's a reason that they're still in the NCAA tournament, according to Joe Lunardi. I mean, they're 14-7 now, 15-7 now, I guess it is. And they're a good team. They can go out and they can, like you said, they lost that game against Duke. They just as easily could be 16-6 right now, and it would be a whole different conversation. So they're a tough team. They came out, and we just came out flat. Armando was the only one who showed up in the first 15 minutes of that game.
Yeah, I mean, Armando did well, 24 points, 13 rebounds. I mean, Armando played as well as he played in the Duke game. The problem was Cormac Ryan. The problem was Elliot Cadeau. The
Couldn't shoot his
problem
way out of a bag right now, Cormac.
Yeah, he can't shoot. Cormac Ryan cannot shoot. The problem was 3-pointers. It was 33% from three. I mean, you get 40% from three, you win that game, right? 9 for 27. You go 15 for 27. 15 for 27. I mean, it's a little bit different, right? The problem was Carolina's shooting was piss poor. The problem was Elliot Cadeau. I mean, for me, he's not adding that much. And you see this guy, Elliot Cadeau, disappear when teams get big and heavy. And Clemson has some big, heavy guys in the paint. Your thoughts, Will?
Yeah, I mean, Elliot Cadeau had a couple of buckets, but he's still, I mean, he's a freshman, right? This kid should be in high school for all intents and purposes. Like this, that's the issue. That kind of goes back to the previous conversation about recruiting and these 5-stars, is that freshmen are going to make freshman mistakes, and he'll work through it. I have no doubt in my mind he's good enough to work his way out of this slump. But this loss, I really think when we tied it up, I think it was 70-70. That's where you miss a guy like Seth Trimble. Seth Trimble being a lockdown defender who could have stepped up, and I think Joe Girard went down and hit a big three right after we tied it up. And every time we would cut it close, one of those guys would have an answer, and that's where you miss a lockdown, shutdown defender like Trimble.
All right, well, that's okay.
Listen,
so last question. Go ahead,
real quick,
Darryl. Go ahead.
Hassan.
Go ahead.
With
Darryl.
a name like Cormac, man, you got to shoot the ball better than that.
He's a fundamental basketball player, man. He's got to go out.
He's not fundamental. He can't shoot. He's been a dog. Like he hasn't been what he's supposed to be. He was supposed to stretch the field. He was supposed to bring some outside shooting, but I don't think he can shoot in the Dean Dome. You come from these smaller gyms and the ball is going down, but when you see that roof in the Dean Dome, I don't think some guys can shoot there. What are your thoughts on that, Will?
Yeah, it's overwhelming. I took my son to not to change the subject, but I think it kind of goes hand in hand. So I took my son to game day, and it was his first trip to the Dean Dome on Saturday morning. And even my 7-year-old son, who is as much of a fan as a 7-year-old can be, walked around in awe, just staring at the rafters and the jerseys and the banners and the lights and the noise and everything. It's that kind of place where if a 7-year-old on college game day is in awe, you could only imagine how a 25-year-old, fifth year, sixth year senior is going to be. There's got to be a ton of pressure, but at the same time, we brought you in for a reason, man. You gotta figure it out.
You brought him in because he was shooting a rock at Notre Dame. That's
like
why you brought him in.
He was like a 45% 3-point shooter.
Right. And the point that I'm making is he probably is a good shooter, but he's never had to shoot under the lights being that bright, right? He's never had to shoot during a Carolina Duke matchup. He's never had to shoot with pressure of winning, right? Like, it takes time. Not everybody can play in the Dean Dome. A lot of guys go elsewhere because they don't want to shoot in that gym. That's one of the biggest gyms in college basketball, 22,000 fans, and not everybody can play that. And that's what I think the problem. Let's go back to Clemson. Darryl and Will, this is for both of you.
Okay.
I stated that Clemson lost the Duke game because of sloppy ball handling, and they went into Chapel Hill and defeated UNC. An important note to the fans, that's only Clemson's second win in their basketball history at the Dean Dome. The first one was in 2020, and the other one was Tuesday night in the Dean Dome. And they've never won there. Never. Okay? But before 2020, never. Clemson was an easy win. My question to you guys is, could Clemson be underrated? Could Clemson, we talk about gelling, like it's not important to gel in November, December, January, but February, March, you need to come. Could Clemson be an underrated team? And could Clemson be a sleeper in the ACC tournament? Talk to us.
Yeah. I think, I don't know how good. It's really difficult to tell how good these teams are, right? Because the ACC hasn't been great this year. And I don't know if Carolina came out flat because, they were down 9.5. So, you're coming off a big win against Duke. I don't know if they came out flat. So it's really hard to gauge where Clemson is right now. But I do think they're better than most people think they are. I just don't know how good they really are. I think that, PJ Hall, as Will has mentioned, a really good player, able to stretch the floor. Gerard as well. Very solid, very, very solid. 25 from PJ Hall, 21 from Gerard in that game against Carolina. I think these guys could be a sleeper going into the NCAA tournament, but the ACC's just been so bad this year that I don't know how good these teams really are. I don't know how good, the ACC is as a whole, but it hasn't looked very good this year.
Will, tackle that. Come on.
Yeah, I agree. I do agree that the ACC hasn't looked good, but I've been listening to the radio a lot and just trying to figure out why the ACC is so far down. And if you look at a lot of these teams, their out of conference schedules are really, really tough. But if you look at out of conference schedules of the 6 or 8 ranked teams from the Big 12, they're terrible. So these conferences are benefiting from weak out of conference schedules, which is kind of elevating them a little bit. And I think as far as Clemson goes, they're good. They're finally healthy. I think that they can play. I think there's a lot of parity in college basketball this year. And I think that if you put them, a healthy Clemson, if they come out and play the way that they played against Carolina, they can play with a lot of teams in the country.
Yeah, and they've got size. They do. DJ Hall he's a handful. Like
that Shefflin kid is a kid that nobody's really talking about, but he's averaging, I think it's 9-9 or 10-10, and he hits big shots. He's big, he's quick, he's physical. That's a name to watch out for if Clemson's going to make a run.
Clemson will either make in my opinion, Clemson will either make a run probably into late second weekend, or they'll get beat the first game of the tournament.
Yeah. There's no in between with it.
Yeah, I don't think there's any in between.
All right, guys, this is episode 12. It's been great. It was been great talking about this with you guys. I can't wait till we do it again on March 9th when the Carolina goes to Cameron Indoor Stadium to take on Duke. Thank you to my partners, Darryl Brunson, Will Phelan. Thank you for this past hour. If you like this podcast, share it with your friends. If you like this podcast, like the podcast so you will know every time we put up a new podcast. If you'd like to donate to this podcast, you can do it at bluebloodrivalry.com. And we will be back next week talking more Duke and Carolina basketball. And as we always say at the end of the show, we out.
We out.
We out.
Blue Blood TV podcast is available on Spotify, iTunes, or wherever you get your podcasts. Remember, guys, these shows grow when you share them. So we have a great show here. Share them with all your friends. Make them aware of the Blue Blood TV podcast.
Oh.